Hey guys, it's me Coral. Welcome back to my channel. I'm here with a kind of negative, kind of positive thing here, and I know like we're already into 2020. Why am I still talking about 2019? But I just like could not fit all the end of the year content that I wanted to make into the end and the very beginning of these years. So I'm here with five of my least favorite and 5 of my favorite books that I read in 2019. I did kind of I don't know, you could call it like a companion video to this, talking about my favorite horror of 2019 just a couple videos ago. So if you haven't watched that and if you're interested, it should just be like in the first couple videos that pop up on my thing. So the favorites that I have here are not horror. However, some of the least favorites do include horror. So I think I'm going to start with my least favorites first. Because I'd like to leave on a positive note, I guess. I think that feels better. And I also just like want to do a little disclaimer. And that is, of course, my opinions are my own. You might love these ones that I didn't, and you might not love the ones that I did love, and that's okay. So I don't need any negative ass comments coming after me about not liking things that you like, because of course, I've said this before, I'm so happy that you liked this thing that I didn't. Why would I be unhappy about that? Except for there is one book here that if you liked it, I might question you, because it's like a nonfiction that was written in a really mean way, but you know, other than that, like, of course I'd be happy that you liked something. I'm not an animal. Okay, so starting off here, this one I always feel kind of bad when I talk about it, so I've kind of avoided it, except for like in the wrap-up of the month that I read this in. But the first one here is Warm Dark Places Are Best by Mike Duke, and he is an indie author. So like, please go check out his work, even though I didn't like this. And like, this isn't the only book he's written, so there could possibly be things that I did like. But I'm gonna say, I'm not gonna shit talk, but the style of writing in here was kind of like juvenile. Like, it sounded like something teenage boy would write. There were so many weird sex scenes in this, and it's like under 100 pages. It's 91 pages long. There were like 6 sex scenes in here, which I'm not a prude, but like, the story was about these people fucking, which is so weird. Like, that's basically what happened in this story. It's about a couple who start renting an apartment, and the apartment building seems to be infested with cockroaches except for their apartment. So they're like, huh, whatever. And they move in, and I don't know. Like, maybe if that interests you, finding out what happens, maybe you should read this. It's only a couple bucks if you buy it on Amazon. And even less if you buy it for your Kindle or something. It might even be on Kindle Unlimited. But I just didn't like this. I didn't like it at all. It was weird. And in fact, I like read some of these out loud to some of my friends because they were just like so weird. Weird sex. Just like very weirdly written. Like, one of them, I remember it so vividly, even though I read this at the very beginning of last year. They were like getting into it, and they were using like old-timey English accents, but it was like a pseudo like rape thing, and it was just off the wall. And not to kink shame anyone, of course, but it was weird. It was very weird. The next one here is Gardens of the Moon by Steven Erikson. This is the first book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen series. It's a pretty expansive series, and I know that there are people out there who really, really love this series, And what I'm gonna say is I'm so glad for you that you love this series, because that means that you can spend so much time reading and enjoying the rest of the series. But for me, I found this completely inaccessible. This is definitely not a book for people, and I'm not saying that necessarily I'm not coming into the fantasy genre for the first time, but like this is something that absolutely, if you have not read fantasy, like do not fucking start with this. It was so inaccessible. You're thrown into this story. It feels like everybody's keeping secrets from you. You don't know what's going on. There are so many characters, and it's like there's this war happening, so you don't really, I couldn't get a clear view of like who's working for who. Because it seemed like these people didn't like they were like working against some of the people they were fighting for, but it was like, but why then? Because, I don't know, there was just so many questions, there were so many characters, there was this magic system that I didn't understand, and like a big part of this is like the magic system, and I don't know, I couldn't like it. It was written kind of weirdly too. Like it was hard to read, and I read this partly with a group of people on Instagram, and a lot of people had the same problem, so I know it was not me. Like there were people who bought the audiobook so that they could read and then go back through it with the audiobook, and like I just don't feel like you should have to do that with a book. That's crazy. So I don't know. This was a tough read, and I ended up getting through it. And I will never read it again, ever. I'm not gonna read the rest of the series. But of course, if you loved it, so happy for you. This next one is a horror book. This is The Possession by Michael Rutger, and this is like the follow-up to The Anomaly, which I loved so much. I think I read that in, I don't know if it came out in 2017 or 18, but I loved it. It was one of my favorite books of that year. And so I was so excited when The Possession came out with the crew from the Anomaly Files, which is like the crew in the Anomaly. And I can't even like tell you what this is about. I ended up DNFing it, so it was very disappointing. I read, oh, I still have a bookmark in here. I read to page 220 and DNF'd it. So maybe that gives you an indication of like how hard I tried to like this book, but the characters, they were just doing fucking nothing this whole time. And there was like, I don't even know how these people get involved with this thing, because that didn't even really make sense. But the crew for the Anomaly Files, the main character, the guy who is like the star of the show, the Anomaly Files, his ex-wife, or soon-to-be ex-wife maybe they're separated in the process of getting a divorce or something like that. She is, I think, some sort of journalist, investigative journalist or something, and she comes across this disappearance of a girl in this very small town, and I don't know why she even wants to, and like, why does she feel like she has to go there to tell the story? I don't know. The girl disappears, and then somehow the Anomaly Files, like, even though there's like not even anything that would fit into what the Anomaly Files works on, like this is a disappearance of a young girl. This isn't Bigfoot or Kincaid's Cave, you know? So I don't know how they got caught up in this, but they do, and it's just like nothing. I can tell you like 3 things that happened in this book, because like that's what happened, and as far as I read, I guess. So it was so disappointing that I DNF'd it. I am really sad. I'm really sad. It was just so painfully slow and so just bleh. Next here is The Gilgul by Henry W. Hocherman. I'm just gonna go over this quick, but I did do a longer review on this. It's spoiler free, of course, but if you'd like to watch that, I will do one of those thingies at the top of the screen. But this was featured in Paperbacks from Hell by Grady Hendrix. And this is the story of two people who are about to get married, and the young woman is Jewish. I think the man is too, but I couldn't remember. I think he must be. But on their wedding day, she becomes this demon, and it's like a curse kind of, and I don't know. There's a lot of hemming and hawing in this book. You go, I don't know. I think my main problem with it is that we start to follow this journalist, of course, who's like investigating why this woman is suddenly a demon. And I just like didn't care about him. There's like all these reasons. It's like, well, he's doing this because of this, because his wife was in a car accident or something like that. And I just like, I didn't care. I didn't care about any of these people. They were lifeless. And the woman who is possessed, her husband's just kind of a real piece of shit. And there's a lot of weird boob stuff that happens. And I don't know. It was just like, it was not even like so bad it's good. So it's just bad. And here it is, the worst fucking book I read last year. This is Gosnell. It was written by Anne McElhinney and Phelim McAleer, something like that. And this book was trash. I went into this expecting it to be a book about a true crime case that I'm very interested in. It's so sad and tragic. It's about a doctor named Kermit Gosnell, and he ran a women's clinic in, I think it was Philadelphia. Does it say, was it easily? Yeah, Philadelphia. And he catered to mostly low-income women, lots of people of color. There's lots of women who were immigrants, women who didn't speak English, and he was so careless and negligent. It's awful. There were women who died because he wasn't training his employees to use like the anesthetics, right? Anesthesia. What anesthetics? He was not training his employees to use the anesthesia correctly, and like they shouldn't have been doing it at all because they were not anesthesiologists, they were not doctors, maybe they weren't even high school graduates. So it was very bonkers. The biggest tragedy is that this went on for so long, I think because he was preying on women of color, like I said, and women who were immigrants, and women who didn't have enough money to take care of abortions that they needed in a healthier environment. And it's very sad. There are testimonials from women who had to go there and survived, of course, but it's like they knew it was dirty. It smelled like cat piss. They knew that this was not going to, the quality of care that they were going to get was going to be nil, but they couldn't go anywhere else. So it was this or nothing, and they had to choose this, which is fucking humiliating and terrifying. And so because this was an abortion clinic, the book focused heavily on the fetuses and not so much on the women who were killed and the women who were mutilated, women who couldn't get pregnant again after having abortions performed by this doctor, which should not happen. That's a myth that happens in normal practices. And I don't know, it was just a tragedy, and the authors really pushed the like pro-life bias that they clearly had. There were lots of microaggressions towards the women who had to terminate pregnancies. There was lots of microaggressions towards Black women, and it was just fucked up. Like, they use this to push an agenda, which is just so wrong in any true crime book. Like, it doesn't matter if it's not even something so politically charged. Like, if you have an agenda and you're using a tragedy to push that, it's really fucked up. So this was hard to read, and if I didn't, I think I would have DNF'd it if I didn't want to be able to give it a clear review. And it wasn't just the content in this either. Like, the writing, there was lots of weird chunks taken from like testimonies, and it just like wasn't, it didn't really make sense. There was lots of repeated phrases, and they would repeat what happened over and over again, and the story was not like cohesive, because they talk about how Kermit Gosnell got caught, and it wasn't even for fucking mutilating women. It was because he was selling drugs, basically. So I don't know. It was just, I don't know. This was a tough one. I can't recommend it, and I think the authors should feel shame for the way that they wrote this, and I think they really need to check themselves, because there's a lot of racist shit in this. I mean, it's really what it boils down to, I think. Okay, and now we can get to the things that I liked. The first one here is The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. I think I read this before last year, I think. But I definitely read the second book this year. And that is The Way of Kings. What comes after that? Way of Kings. Words of Radiance. I did it! And these are part of the Stormlight Archive series that is currently still being written. The third book's out. The fourth one is coming out this year, so I'm looking forward to that. And this is a really expansive high fantasy series. There are multiple point of views, so it's hard to give you a clear synopsis of this, but there is a man who has been in slavery. His name is Kaladin, and he finds out that he is able to take in this stuff they call Stormlight, which is like something that, I don't know, it's so crazy. This world is so rich and intense, and there are these giant storms that people have to like be indoors for, or like you'll probably get killed, and they just happen every so often. And that charges like these kind of like gems that they have, and he's able to take in this Stormlight and use it to like enhance his body, and like he's stronger, he can jump higher, he's like faster, he can stick himself to walls. So like he finds out that he has this, but he's a slave, and he's basically doomed to die because they're on this warfield. They call it the plateaus, and there are these chasms that the armies have to cross. So they have these bridgemen, which are the slaves, and they have to run ahead of the army to put the bridges down so that the army people can cross them. But they have to do this while being fired at from the Parshendi, that's what they're called. And the Parshendi are like these kind of not really humanoid figures. Like, they all are very androgynous. You can't really tell who is a woman, who is a man, and they have like these carapaces on them that's like armor, and it's very cool. That's like just one tiny drop in this entire like ocean of shit that's happening. It's so fun and cool. There's like a lot of political like sneakiness, and you're wondering if Kaladin is even going to live. We also, like I said, there's political stuff. So we're following like a man whose brother was the late king, who was killed by the Parshendi. So like that's why they're warring, and oh my god, there's just so much shit going on here. It's very good. It's intense, but I don't think it's one of those fantasy series that is too hard to get into. Like, for somebody who doesn't read a lot of fantasy, it was very good. It's very fucking good. I think I can say now even that I think it might be one of my favorite fantasy series, like long running. But we'll see, I guess. The next one I want to talk about here is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. And this is a science fiction book, and this one, I will say, could be inaccessible for some people. It does start out, it kind of throws you into this world where you don't know what the fuck is going on. It's hard to kind of understand the way that this world works, because it's like our world. Like, there are places that we have in this world, but it's like very unlike our world. And in this world, there are people called Origins, and they can like tap into the earth and do crazy things because their power is like so big. Sometimes stuff can happen when their like emotions run too high. So because of this, they are like feared, they are killed, they're outcast, and we're following 3 different women basically, and they're in different timelines, and you can tell that they're different kind of because of the way that people treat the Origins in this case. And one is a mother whose son was recently killed, and she's trying to find the person who killed him, which she thinks was her husband. And then there's another timeline of a young girl who has just been discovered as an Origin, and she is brought to this like school where they train Origins. And so yeah, we get to see what it's like for people who are trained with their powers. And the final one is a woman who has been trained, and she is very powerful, so she gets sent out on work missions, you know, basically to help different cities with the problems that they're having with kind of the land. And it's all very tumultuous, and there are these seasons that come in, and it's like different kind of like apocalyptic things. Like there's like the season of acid, and oh man, I can't remember. There's a couple that they talk about though, and it's like many people don't survive. So they're constantly trying to guess if there is a season coming, you know, and I don't know, it's very good. Once I got into it and once I was familiar with the characters, and I still don't know if I quite grasp exactly what is going on, but this was a very, very good book. It's the beginning to a trilogy, and I can't wait to see what happens next. The ending was like, it stabbed me in the fucking guts. Next, I have a true crime book. This is called Bully by Jim Schutze, and this is the story of these kids in the 90s growing up in southern Florida, and it's kind of complicated to explain. Basically, there are these 2 friends, Bobby and Martin, and they've kind of grown up together. They're from the same like middle upper class neighborhood, and Bobby is definitely the dominant friend. He picks on Marty, he makes him feel bad. Bobby starts getting into steroids and become like his temper can just go off, you know? So there is definitely like physical and emotional abuse in this relationship. And eventually they meet 2 girls, Allie and Lisa. And Marty starts dating Lisa, and Lisa sees how abusive Bobby is, and she's kind of like getting the brunt of that too, because when Bobby hurts Marty, he turns around and hurts Lisa. So she comes up with this plan to murder Bobby. And I think I'll leave the rest to you. This was one of the best true crime books I've read in so long. The story is fucking bonkers. It's so strange and crazy, and while reading this, the whole time I was like, how did these kids not think that they would get caught with this? It's so crazy. It's very good. It kind of has maybe an affluenza feel to it, because I think because some of these kids were from good, secure, wealthy families, they just like thought that nothing would ever come back on them for this. So it was very, very good. I definitely recommend this. So good. Okay, next I have Tampa by Alissa Nutting. You've probably heard me talk about this book so much, so I'll make this short and sweet. This is about a teacher named Celeste, and she is attracted to like young teenage boys. It's really creepy to talk about. But this book is so good. And I know that the synopsis will probably put some people off, and definitely if the synopsis makes you feel queasy, don't read the book because it is very forthright. It doesn't use cutesy language, and I mean, she's sexually assaulting these boys, really is what it comes down to. She's a pedophile, so that's hard for a lot of people to read. But I think that this is very poignant. I think it says a lot of things about how our society treats females who are predators as opposed to men who are predators. It's like kind of ironic in a way, and very good, very well written. While it is hard to read, I guess it's like not exploitive, maybe. But this was so good and I really loved it, and I can't wait to read her other book. Next I have I Darken by Kiersten White. This is the first book in a trilogy that's kind of like historical fiction, kind of like alternate history, and it is a gender swap kind of retelling, I guess, or reimagining, and it's like if Vlad Dracul was instead a woman. This spans the entire, I mean not this book, this series spans the entire life of these siblings, Lada and Radu, and they are born in a little country called Wallachia, which is like by Turkey and Hungary and Transylvania, and like an Eastern European country. It goes through their whole life. Like they're kind of forced to go live in Turkey, and this is very, very much like a culture shock to them because they grew up, they were like Orthodox, and now they are in a place where they speak Turkish, and everyone's Muslim. A lot of it's like, this first book at least, they have to figure out if they want to assimilate or not. And it's very, very good. I think it was very well written. The characters feel real. There is a lot of heartbreak and hard decisions these characters have to make. And I just finished the third book this month actually, and it was, oh my god, so good. So yeah, if historical fiction's your thing, I cannot recommend this book enough. Lada is one of the, maybe the most fucking badass fictional character I've ever come across, and Kiersten White wrote her so well. She's gonna be one of my favorites of all time, I think, forever. She's just so great. And yeah, such a good story. I don't see a lot of people talk about this, but it is so worth the read. It's so, so good. Okay, those are some of my favorites and least favorites of 2019. Thank you guys so, so much for watching. Like I said, this is just my opinion, so if you think that you're going to like one of these books, or if one of my favorites doesn't sound interesting to you, don't pick it up, because it probably won't be. So, yeah, that's all I have to say about it, I guess. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in another video soon. Goodbye!